Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode on Radiance Videography Podcast. Today, I have a special guest, my friend Kameron Bagby with Simpli Homes. So excited that you're on this podcast, man. Thanks for jumping on. We're going to be talking all about your story, kind of how you started with Simpli Homes, how you met Jesse, which is the owner of the company, and just maybe share some insight on some business things that we might be able to help some of our listeners out with.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to jump on this podcast with us. Thanks so much, man.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk. We get to, we've known each other a while now, so always enjoy our conversations. Cool to do it on a podcast, first one, but this is a nice setup. So
side note for y'all, Kameron Bagby is my brother's son-in-law. So it'd be my nephew by marriage.
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm so excited. Like Cam, you've had you're really humble. So I know you're not going to brag on yourself, but
the most humble people are talking about.
You started working for a company called Simpli Homes, which is owned by Jesse Goodfellow, and he's also a good friend of ours. Mm-hmm. But you guys basically, flip a lot of foreclosed houses and become very successful. You kind of created a really good model that has worked really well. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that, but could you just maybe start out a little bit about your background, your story, how you kind of got into working with Jesse and Simpli Homes? And then I'd love to be able to talk about some of the business and maybe some of the successes that you have or some things that you've learned that could really help a lot of our listeners out that, because essentially what we want to do is provide information that can help other people in business become more successful in different areas, whether it's leadership, culture, or systems, whatnot. So it's going to be kind of a free-flowing conversation. Kind of would take us wherever it leads, and we'll see how it goes. But just start out with a little bit more of your backstory, like, and how you got hooked up with Jesse.
Sounds good. Yeah. So how I got connected with Jesse is actually a pretty funny story. Guy named Braden. I went to high school with him. And at this time I just graduated. I was 17, was going to SCC, so a tiny community college, and working a couple jobs like at a restaurant and then doing some construction stuff on the side here and there. Well, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I got a buddy. He's moving. He's pretty wealthy. He'll probably pay us all right." And I was like, "Okay." So I show up and we're like moving him into his house. Yeah. I don't even know who it is yet. I haven't even met him. There's a truck with boxes, get him in the house. So I'm just running the boxes in and out. And then he shows up, and he had his picture for when he graduated in the same high school that we went to, LCA, teeny tiny high school. And his picture's up in the hallway. So I was like, oh, and I heard of him. He was a legend, played on one of the best basketball teams that went through the school. I was like, oh, that's Jesse Goodfellow. So we were talking just while moving. And in talking, we figured out that I was working at a factory, and it was the same factory he had worked at when he was, I don't know how old he was, but it's the same factory. So we went to the same school, worked at the same factory.
A lot of coincidences there.
Yeah. Just knew a ton of the same people. And I don't know if he offered anything that day. I think it was a few days later. He texted me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come work for me? Do you want to come do some construction stuff?" Well, I'd been doing clean outs since I was like 13 or 14 years old, when my brother would drive me to do them for a guy named Matt out of Troy. He's got tons of rentals. He's really big into storage out there in Troy as well. But so I was like, heck yeah, I've already done this for a really long time. So went to work for him, did a lot of clean outs, cleaned a lot of trailer park toilets with brushes so that we could keep them for Larry. And
I think we've all been there, man. I used to have some jobs crawling under trailers, and worked for my dad. Like we would be working on HVAC systems, and there's spiders and nasty. It was just mildewy, and he'd be sending me up in crawl spaces.
Yeah, you were smaller. Yeah, it's like shimmy your way up there. Exactly. So yeah, stuff like that. Especially because I was skinnier. I was smaller. I was the low man on the totem pole. Yeah, if there was a frozen pipe that needed heat tape in the winter, or if there was a nasty trailer toilet that, you in the trailer rental game, you gotta save money because it's not like the margins are super thick. So if you can clean a toilet and put it back in, you're cleaning a toilet, putting it back in. So I did that for probably a year, maybe two. During that time though, I was fortunate to, so there were the sucky jobs that I kind of got every now and then, but not that big of a deal. Cause I was younger. I knew I was like, I got to earn this anyways. But I had some guys that taught me how to do flooring, how to paint, how to do light fixtures, how to do cabinets, how to do drywall, how to do basic plumbing, how to do really basic electric, like just like outlets and switches. So kind of learn the in and outs of a residential home, just a house, through these guys that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. So they have crazy tricks and tips and things that just cut time in half. Yeah. Because they've just done it forever. They're like, don't read the instructions.
Yeah, you learned some invaluable tips there, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So somewhere along the way in there, I was probably, I think I had turned 18 because that's how old you have to be to get your real estate license. And Jesse was like, hey, do you want to get your real estate license? I'll pay for it, which was great. I didn't have any money. And I was like, okay. So I got an online course, clicked through and didn't read a single page of the online course, barely. I read like the first 10 pages and I was like, dude, I'm not doing this. Went and took the test, failed the test, took a piece of paper out to my car, wrote down every answer that I didn't get right, and then memorized the answers to those questions and retook the test a week later and was able to pass it.
Bro, he's him, man. He's that guy, man. Dude, there's no way I could do that.
It was like all short-term memory too, because like by memorize, I mean like I wrote them all down as fast as I could. I was like, okay, I didn't remember how many square feet are in an acre. So it's like 43,560. Write that down. Didn't remember when this law went into effect. Write that down. Well, then the day I retook the test, I had it on like a cheat sheet and I just read them all, put it down, ran into there, clicked through, because you could skip through the questions to get like, you could go back to questions essentially. So I skipped through to all the ones that I like had crammed into my head.
Oh my God.
So I found acre 43,560. It's like this law. Okay,
bro,
enter
you got
that.
like one of those photographic memories.
I was seeing the sheet of paper in my mind, but I knew I only had like 30 minutes before it was gone.
Dude, that is impressive, man. There's no way I could do something like that.
Oh, man. Well, I was motivated too because Jesse's always been, he's a super gracious guy in general, but he's like, hey, I'm not going to just pay for this test in perpetuity. Yeah. Because I think he kind of picked up on
There's a limit here.
I think he kind of picked up on that I didn't study super hard. So he was like, all right, retake it. But you don't get like unlimited chances. So that added to the pressure. But yeah, so when I got it.
Good job, Jesse.
Thank you. So when I got it, I had a cheap little laptop. And at that point we were just working in Jesse's attic. I was sitting on a couch, even shorter than this, it was a stylish couch. So I just remember my knees would always be like up here all day long. I'd have my laptop plugged into a charger because the battery didn't.
You're a tall guy too. You're like 6'5".
6'5", yeah. And yeah, so and it's all in my legs too. I have a pretty normal sized torso, so my legs just be up. And Jesse's desk was over here, so I'm on my computer and I just ask him questions. But at that time, Jesse was doing 40, 50 homes by himself. It was absolutely absurd. Not a ton of systems because he had it all in his head. I always just say like, this is in your head, makes no sense. Yeah. So so basically since he had 40 or 50 homes already, I had a pretty full-time job just throwing the listings up.
Can you maybe just back up a hair for those people that maybe aren't familiar with like foreclosed houses and what it is you guys do? Can you just explain a little bit about what that is? What that looks like?
Yeah. So at that time, I didn't really know either, but yeah. So what I had gotten involved in unknowingly was the foreclosure system is super archaic, and you actually have to, if you stop paying your bills, what you'll get in the mail is like 6 or 9 months of certified mail, and certified just means that you have to respond to it, and there's like a way that the sender knows that you've responded to it. So you get a buttload of those. After that 6 to 9 months, the bank has to publish in newspapers 3 times that the foreclosure is occurring. So the idea was like in the 1800s that if you didn't get your mail, you'd see it in the newspaper. Yeah. Which is funny because mail and newspapers just old now, but I'm sure you get an email as well. I don't know. So they publish that, and then these auctions actually occur at the courthouse steps, just like an ancient, like they did back in the 1800s. Like you went to the town square, you stood at the courthouse steps, they read it off from the newspaper, and then you bid on it. So that's primarily what we do is we purchase these foreclosure homes. It's 95% of what we do. So that is what I had kind of, and then I guess we purchase them, fix them up, and sell them. That's kind of how the business works. So that
I just figured you guys like to buy foreclosures and
just to get them. we just look at them, go up to it.
We buy 100 a year just to look at.
That's a nice falling apart, full of feces house right there. We should keep it. So yeah, that's the kind of the general, and then I can get into the more specifics because the story's ending up here pretty soon. So I did the listings for a year and rode around with Jesse. And while I was riding around with Jesse, we'd go to the houses. And again, he kind of had these formulas in his head, and they're not secret formulas. Like to purchase a home, you take what you think it could sell for, you put a 25% margin in there for your profit and for things that you miss. You estimate what the rehab is going to be, like what it's going to cost to fix the home. And then you have to take into account closing costs because it's super expensive to sell a home. It's about 5, 6, 7% of your sale price is going to go towards agents, title companies. So you definitely have to take that into account. But then that's your bid. So I rode around with Jesse for a long time. He was a home inspector before he did this. So he had tremendous knowledge of just single family residence. He could look at something and be like, that's a $35,000 flip, and he'd be within like a couple grand.
Wow.
I didn't have that experience.
Yeah.
So I took one class at SCC that was worth the $600, and it was a Microsoft Excel class, which is the same as Google Sheets pretty much. So I sat there, and while he was doing everything, I was just trying to type it into a Google Sheet because I was like, man, I can't keep stuff in my head like he can. Well, it ended up working pretty well. So we still use that Google Sheet to this day through it's been updated quite a few times.
Yeah.
But that leads into kind of the last two stages of my story here, which was then Jesse began to be like, do you think you could do the formulas? Do you think you could go look at the houses and you could buy them? Because from his perspective as a business owner, that was the part that took up the most time was driving to the property, looking at it. A typical day at that stage, I'd ride around with him all day. We'd wake up, go to a house, look at it, take pictures, estimate it, go to the auction. If we purchased it, then he'd have to send a wire over from the bank. And then the rest of the day, we'd go to the 7 houses we were already working on, like go to them and just make sure the contractors are working.
So it probably made it really hard to like really work on the business aspect of things, like
exactly
the working on your business instead of working in the business all the time.
100%. I think that's what he started to think is like, I would have to imagine I wasn't as involved in like the business strategy back then. I was just I was young. I was just trying to learn as much as I could. But yeah, now that I'm where I'm at, it would be impossible to improve systems when he was working 80 hours a week, always on the phone. I mean, anywhere we were driving, he was on the phone every time because we were working with several contractors at the same time. So he asked me, can you run around and start looking at them and buying them? And if you're seeing a trend here, the funny thing about my story is everywhere I went in the business, I would just try to develop a system to leave behind to give to somebody else. So this was the first big one was if I can get a system here, and I wasn't thinking it at the time, but it worked out this way. If I can get a system here, we can hire somebody else to do this and they can bring value to the company and we can kind of get them involved. So I looked at and purchased the homes for a while. I did that for a lot longer. Maybe 2, 3 years, maybe even 4. I've been at Simpli Homes for 8 now. So the last stage, so I did that for a long time. We got to 100 homes a year. And we did that 3 years in a row. So we were kind of like super cool, like great, we've done 300 homes in 3 years. Also, why are we not growing? We had hit like a hard cap. It's like, it is tremendously difficult to do more than 100 full flips from like the house is about to fall over to it's ready to sell, get it on the market and close on it in 1 year.
That's crazy. Can I stop you for a second on just that one point? Because Cam, again, like I said, it's not they're very humble. Him and Jesse both are some of the most humble people on the planet. So one day me and you were talking and you were kind of explaining how you went to this conference and like it was to go and learn more about how to, flip houses and whatnot. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And, the top two guys that were the keynote speakers, you were telling me how they got up and they were like, yeah, we did 10 homes this year, and like the crowd just goes wild. Like this is like the most unbelievable thing. And I remember you telling me the story kind of like, man, me and Jesse were kind of sitting back being like, well, we flipped like 100 this year, like, so it's like, so it's crazy. You guys have like been able to do something in the industry that a lot of people, if you think about 10 homes, most people look at that and it's just like freaking out. And you guys are here doing like 100 homes in a year. So I wanted to make that point because it's so significant. I know you won't brag about it, but like, it just goes to show that like you guys have something really special there and it's really significant.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah. That conference was funny because we had went and it was a huge, there was thousands of people there. I don't know, 1,000-2,000 people there, like big conference. And and we sat down for the first keynote. Jesse had brought me and our head, the head of construction, or just he's the guy for construction, Javier. And the first guy got up there and said something about doing 10 or 12 homes. And they all lost it, which is 10, 12 homes, you can make a good amount of money, especially if you came from like a regular day job where, you weren't entrepreneurial. It will typically end up in more money. So we're like, all right, nice. Second guy got up there, 7, 8 homes. Everybody goes crazy. I just started looking at Jesse. I was like, Jesse, it's like, I know you can learn something from anybody. And that's really what we shifted our focus. We're like, all right, well, we need to just humble ourselves here. There's definitely something we can learn. Pace Morby did end up going to that conference, and Pace Morby is way bigger than us. So he was like a guest speaker. And when he got up there, we all like locked in. We're like, all right, like this guy is killing it. But I do think while I appreciate the kind words very much, it was almost more ignorance than humility. I genuinely, before that conference, I didn't know what we had done because everything we did, we're just trying to crank it. Like, all right, well, we buy homes, buy a lot of them. We fix them up, do it really fast. So when we went there, that was the first time I realized it's like, have we done something special here? And not to feel good about ourselves, but to be like, maybe if we are doing something special, if it's proprietary in any form, maybe we can push this. Maybe it's, maybe we can use it to grow, which gets to the final stage of my overall story. So I bought them for a long time. And then Jesse and I had been in communication, just not negotiations, but almost negotiations of like, where am I going in the company? Because like I said, it was always my goal to just replace the thing I was doing, get somebody else in there. We've been very blessed in our business and we've been able to pay well. So I've always been like, man, I want to get somebody in here. And I find a ton of meaning in changing people's, and it's not even me, it's the business being able to change people's lives through being a good culture. Like, cause I've always loved going to work, and that's always been like, I want to make somebody else love going to work just every day.
That's incredible.
Maybe like Saturday, I'd be hanging out with my buddies. I'm like, dude, I cannot wait till Monday. Like I want the weekend to be over. I cannot wait till Monday.
That's so cool. I hate to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I remember back in the days whenever like I had a pit in my stomach every week, like going to work. Like I dreaded the weekdays and looked forward to the weekends like most people do. But it's so funny like that you said that, because it has flipped where it's like, now that I do what I love, like just doing what we're doing here, it's like I was so pumped about coming in and doing this podcast with you, and to be able to be like, man, this is what I get to do for, like, it's crazy. So sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you're good. I agree. That's all it really is. It is like, it's cliche, and I don't think people believe it until they try it, of like, nah, I'm not going to love going into work. Those guys are lying. But it's like, no, you can seriously love going to work. And that's what, I did the factory and the restaurant for just a little bit and was like, I don't care if these guys paid me $1 million a year. I do not want to do this. Like, this is terrible.
That's exactly how I felt.
So because we had been blessed in what we were doing, we were able to bring guys in, and I had essentially got it to where I was not useless, but I was redundant. Like, there were people that could do everything I was doing. So Jesse and I began to talk about me taking on more responsibility. And that was the last move, which was just 2 or 3 months ago, where Jesse and I started talking about me being a moving into like a COO position, which using C in a company that's sub $50 billion just sounds silly. But really what we meant was like, I was going to try to run the company for Jesse and just get it to like what I had heard through books and stuff that I had read is essentially like what a business owner wants when they're hiring a C-suite is for their phone to stop blowing up all day long. So that was like the goal I put in my own head. And that's where we've been. So Jesse has been, you know, in my opinion, very humble and very gracious. And he handed over a lot of the responsibilities really quick. I think he made sure I knew how to do them, how to handle them. But he did, you know, kind of pull himself from the business and kind of gave me, I would say, like a testing period. I don't know if he was testing me, but that's what it allowed to happen was, okay, can Cam handle these things? And that's where we kind of currently reside of, you know, I always go to him for advice. He's done it for longer than I have, but really trying to just run things and grow and scale them. So kind of how I hired somebody under me and made it to where, you know, I was redundant in that position and it allowed me to move up. We're trying to do that in the other departments. And that is what we're trying to do to get past 100 homes. Cause that was the 100 homes a year was the past 3 years.
It was just one of those things that you just couldn't like, it was like a threshold for you.
Exactly. Almost. Yeah. It's like a major stepping stone. And in talking to other businessmen about it and what'd they call it? I can't remember the term that they used, but it was a threshold where increased effort couldn't surpass it. Like we couldn't just work more hours. I mean, the 3 years we did 100 homes, it was Jesse, myself, Javier, and one administrator. Like that was it. And we all just worked 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You know, and it's not like boohoo us. Like I said, it's a very fun job. We got to screw around during the day. Like it was cool, but we're just kind of constantly working. Like anything that would come up, if a pipe burst at, you know, 8 o'clock, Javi was out there. Cause it was just us. So what we did last year was we kind of tried to take 2 steps back to take, you know, or 1 step back to take 2 steps forward, however you want to say it. By way of, we stopped cranking on all of our systems. We slowed down on buying, only bought, you know, slightly better deals and hired, I believe we hired 13 people in 1 year. So we went from 4 to 13 additional. So I think we're at 15 like in office and a handful of out of office kind of contractor types. Well, if you get into contractors, we have quite a few. But so from a company structure perspective, it went from Jesse and then kind of 3 departments, which was just 3 people, like admin, construction, and acquisitions, to now it's Jesse owning the company, myself in charge of the departments, and then we have Javon for head of acquisitions, Javier, and then we have our administration side and a finance side now. Under Javon, there's 2 or 3 guys. Under Javier, there's 2 or 3 guys. Under, you know, administration, there's 2 or 3 people assisting. And then each of those people is actually who's in charge of our contractors. So the people that are outside of the company. That did definitely, it represented taking a step back. It lowered the bottom line. Our overhead went through the roof. So that's kind of where we sit now, especially because the real estate market slows down in the winter. We're waiting for the real estate market to pick back up. We have a lot of projects that are going really well. And I try to look at leading metrics instead of lagging metrics. Lagging metrics are your results, like your profit and stuff, and they're the ones that are fun to look at. Leading metrics are the things that you're actually doing to produce the results. So in terms of leading metrics, last year, Javier spent a buttload of time training these guys under him. And we have actually hired a guy now that has a ton of experience. But the leading metrics we're looking at is our average, we call it P2C, purchase to close, or cycle time for general business people, it was around 180 to 200, which anyone else who's in business is going to laugh at me for saying that. But keep in mind, we had one guy doing 100 homes a year, which means he was working on 20 to 30 homes at a time. So I always kind of told Javi, he was pushing a ball forward. It was like he was keeping marbles up on a ramp. Like he'd push it forward and it would start to fall and he'd just hit them. And every fire that came up, he was just putting them out. We went from that 180, 200 mark to so far this year. I believe every project we've bought since January has been sub 60 days completed rehab time.
Wow, that's incredible, huh?
Yeah, that's for a 3 to 4x increase in speed is unreal. And like I said, we haven't closed on those projects because it's the winter, so we're kind of waiting for spring. So maybe we'll do a follow-up episode where I let you know how this year
like
went.
what you were saying a minute ago is how Javier was like juggling like the marbles coming back, and it's like it seems like to me when you're in that position, it's hard to do anything really well. Like if you're always trying to like prop this up and prop that up, put this fire out or whatever, like I would feel like it would be really hard to do.
Exactly. Yeah, you're dead on. And that's what I always try to give him props, and because he seriously did 100 homes in 1 year, which I don't know if another human being has ever done that. And it was all him. I mean, Jesse would assist with decisions and, maybe some behind the scenes stuff that I don't know about. But from what I saw, it was genuinely every phone call for every property went through one guy on 100 houses, which is, if you've ever flipped one home, I mean, again, this is not like we're so great, but a new guy who has some money and tries to flip a house probably gonna take 6 months. I mean, I think most people would agree if you didn't know what you were doing. So he did incredible, but yeah, maybe the most valuable business insight I've been able to pull from this so far is because of that lack of efficiency, you can see tremendous growth if you're willing to take on the risk of overhead. Because we keep talking about, we have 3 guys right now. The one with the most experience, he's done 3 projects. And the stories I keep hearing from Javier is, I gave him 6 weeks and $50,000 to do this project, and he got it done in 4 for $28,000.
Shoo.
So it's like, holy smokes, maybe it was a one-off, maybe it was a mistake. Yeah. Next one, I just gave him we call them tiers, a tier 1 to 6, which is like a falling over house to pimped out. I gave him 8 weeks and $70,000. He did it in 6.5 for $50,000. I mean, that's been the consistent.
Wow.
So I think even Javier has realized
the efficiency has just went way up. Huh?
Yeah. I think the guy that we hired can take his time and he can focus and he can find little ways to save money. Mm-hmm. Whereas Javier, and he would be the first to say this, when he was doing that many projects, he had to throw money at problems. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, the water burst. So it'd be like, we wouldn't tip it. Now we would not hire like a commercial company to go out there and take care of it. Javier had to hop on the phone and just send whoever out there, and commercial companies obviously just cost more. So I think through that, our new guys are able to build relationships with these people and just think extremely creatively on, okay, like what can we go do instead? And that's what we're finding with flips is there's 100 items, probably more than 100 items in a residential property. And if you spend 5% less per item, you're saving $20,000 at the end. So that's been a big side. And I think accountability. Javier, it was just get the job done. That was the old form of accountability. Like, dude, we're just cranking. We just need you to get it done. And one of the problems that caused was as soon as a project had gone poorly or we knew it wasn't going to be super profitable, I believe this is just kind of a human nature thing, it would get pushed to the back burner. Because it'd be like, we just don't even want to think about that one. Like we're going to lose money on it or we're going to break even. Well, then what happened was we'd build those up, and we're kind of going through this now it's called
a backlog of.
Yeah, they build up. And I mean, it's real estate. So if you have 5 of them, that means you have $1 million of bad properties. So it's like $1 million of bad assets is not good for anybody.
That's a lot of pressure.
So we kind of became aware of what's called sunken cost fallacy, which is like you want to hold on to something or put more effort into something because you've already put effort or money or time into something. And the sunken cost fallacy has caused us to make some stupid decisions. Just hold on to properties that we shouldn't have held on to, prolong, just lose like we've really tried to focus on that as well. But instead of that, now our new system is the contractor's pay is pretty much half. 50% of their pay is based on being under budget and under their timeline. So there's this new form.
Goals in, huh?
Mm-hmm. So it brings in a new form of actual accountability. Yeah. And you don't have to be like on them all the time. It's not like wag your finger accountability. It's like they want the money, like, rightfully so. They're working hard. So we just kind of work with them and try to give them fair deadlines and fair budgets. So through that, I really think we're going to hit our goal, which is to get our cycle times from purchase to close down to 90 days. And if anybody here has flipped a house, that's a crazy number, but it is very, very possible. Because we sat down and we did the math on the things that we could do to grow the company to get past the 100. The few options we had were get access to more capital, aka leverage, get debt, and we'd have to borrow like $1 million to do 10 more homes. And then we looked at our cycle times, and if we can get our cycle times down to 90 days, we can currently, with our current capital, not borrowing anything, do over 200. So at the end of last year, Jess and I looked at it and we're like, okay, let's focus on that one. Like, don't borrow more money. Like, we'll focus on, even if we get close to 90-day cycle times. So that's, I think that brings us up to the current, that's what we're working on now, cycle times and hiring.
That's incredible, man. Like the whole process and the story and seeing your growth. And I'm sure you've learned so much. And right now it sounds like you're working on a lot of the processes to make the systems work for you. You got a great team of people and a great culture. One of the things that I'm actually excited to, I'm going to be having our pastor on next month to talk about like building culture and team and stuff. But it sounds like you were just talking about how like that's something that's really important to you. You know, like, is there some things that maybe you could, because I really believe that there was a saying that I read through a leadership book, and it said the leader builds the culture and the culture builds the team or the business, per se. And so if you don't have a good culture and a good team, you're just not going to be, you're really only going to get to a threshold and never really be able to get beyond that certain point as well with that. Do you have any, some insight on some of the things that you've learned and as you're growing your team that maybe you might be able to share? Definitely.
Yeah. So this is, this is a focus of ours now, or a focus of mine particularly. And I tell my team, I tell anybody I'm talking to, I'm 25 now, just turned 25. So I don't have a ton of life experience to draw on. So there was like an overwhelming amount of pressure I felt when moving to COO. Again, C is very silly, but just trying to run this thing was, oh my gosh, now I'm in charge of the culture. Like I actually like knew that was like, okay, if my leadership is poor, this will go down very quickly. Cause Jesse had built an incredible culture really just by example, by who he was. He's just extremely determined. Like I said, he's extremely gracious. He's not frantic ever. Like we'd be looking at the numbers and we're going to lose a devastating amount of money. Would keep most people up at night. It would actually, these amounts would like ruin a lot of people if their business was going to lose this. And anybody who's done a large number of business, losses just kind of come along with it. He'd talk about it like nothing, like we had accidentally bought too much paper towels or something, like just like it was nothing. Like, yeah, we're going to lose on this one. Just make a decision. So there was a lot of pressure. I was like, okay, I know Jesse's built a culture here. And especially if he's pulling out to the extent that, I kind of think he is, it's going to fall on me. So I started rereading books that I knew were good. And Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership is the one I'm like going with, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Of like, I'm subscribing to that book's, to Jocko's game plan. There's a few prerequisites, I would say, in there, like How to Win Friends and Influence People is obviously like a foundational book.
Yeah, man.
It's just a book.
That one's a classic. You should read at least 4 or 5 times in your life.
Yeah, exactly. We were just laughing about it at lunch the other day. It's like, that book is just full of like, be nice to people. If you want people to be nice to you, be nice to them. If you want people to respect you, respect that. It's the golden rule. It's just 200 pages on like specific examples, but it is. Yeah,
some really good practical stuff that's, in there.
I think you're dead on too. I think it's a reread. There's a guy I follow named Alex Hormozy, and he is where I got this from. And I completely agree. He reads new books every year to determine if he should add them to his reread list.
Oh, wow.
And his reread list is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I I don't know what his particular, but essentially it's like 4 or 5 books.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love that design. Yeah. Like I would say my own is like the Bible, got to reread. How to Influence People, you got to reread. Extreme Ownership has like, I filtered through, I'm not a fast reader, but I filtered through like 5-10 books a few years ago. And it's like, okay, this one, like add it to the reread list.
One book that I would love to throw out to you. Have you heard of the Benham brothers?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
They wrote a book called, it has to do with like building systems in your business but really all principles to building a business. But I love their take on it because, me and you are both believers in God, right? Like, and what I noticed in the past is like people can read these great books, and if you don't have a true, genuine heart change towards people, a love for people, then those good things end up becoming tactics to manipulate people to do things that they don't really want. And ultimately, it's not a great way to build a business. There's a lot of things that ends up transpiring over time where you get a lot of hurt people and whatnot, hurt relationships. But, from that perspective, this book, it starts with a changed heart that's, redeemed by Christ. And, you may not be a believer out there or whatever, but you still have to really have a heart for people to be able to really implement those, a lot of these things and read these great, or else you can use them in a really bad way.
Yeah, I agree. So, I've always thought that the difference between manipulation and influence is intention. Yeah. Like if you have a bad intention, if you're trying to hurt somebody or trying to get something out of them, that's manipulation. If you have a good intention and you're trying to help somebody, that's influence. I was like, that's kind of the only difference I can think of. Cause I mean, in both of them, you're trying to do something to impact somebody's behavior.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're trying to make their life worse, you're manipulating them. But if you're trying to make their life better, you're influencing them.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the principle of, asking questions and how to win friends and influence people and listening to people genuinely. But when you're doing that with a good heart and good intentions, you're truly doing that to care to really understand them. So that way, let's say if you're a salesman, and in reality, if you're truly listening and you believe in your product, that they could benefit, but let's just say it's just not a good fit for them at the moment. Like, you can be okay with that versus if it's like, I got to get this deal and I got to get this number or whatever, and I got to, figure out ways to make them like me so that way they buy from me no matter what. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think I just heard the one of the most successful car salesmen of all time, his motto was, I may not sell them a car today, but I want to make sure they buy their next car from me. And it's kind of right in line with that of like, he was just trying to help them. Like, I want to make sure these people know that I will help them when they need to buy a car, not I'm going to force them to buy a car today.
Absolutely.
Like manipulation techniques and stuff. No. And that's what I love about Extreme Ownership. And Jocko's got a podcast as well.
I need to read this book. I'm really familiar with Jocko, but I've never read this book.
Oh yeah. So the premise is everything is your fault. So it's like you can take ownership of everything is probably the best way to put it. I mean, the words extreme ownership is the most boiled down version. And the idea is, and this is in line with the culture and the company, I mean, we're currently getting our core values mocked up so we can print them huge on the wall and our mission and vision. Yeah. So this really has kind of been, we hired all these people. And when it was 4 of us, the culture was Jesse. Like genuinely, we were all just trying to emulate Jesse's, it was his company. We want to, do this for him. Yeah. What would Jesse do? It was very easy. Well, now we have people, I actually just laughed about this. We hired a guy that I knew before, a great guy. And he keeps saying, he's like, when am I going to get to meet Jesse? And I'm like, you haven't met Jesse? I'm like, because the whole company's always been Jesse. So as soon as we realized that was going down, it was like culture is the thing. But a little note on extreme ownership, the whole premise of the book, an example of extreme ownership would be, so for me, I have an acquisition guy now, and he's in charge of looking at the houses, getting the best information he can, and buying the homes.
Yeah.
And that's a tremendous amount of responsibility. I mean, our average purchase price is between like $100,000 and $150,000. That's a lot of money for somebody to spend. So let's say he goes to a house and gets a picture of the front, the sides, but no information about the inside. Doesn't go up, doesn't knock, doesn't, we're trying to get after information here and just doesn't do any of that. Without extreme ownership, the leadership tactic that I think gets kind of exampled to us a lot of the time when I'd pull them into my office and, what are you doing? We pay you to do this. You're supposed to get information out there. Like, where's your head at? This is horrible. The extreme ownership would be, hey man, I noticed that there's not a ton of information on this property. I really think I didn't do a good enough job of training you and explaining what we're kind of looking for here. It's making me think that my expectations weren't made very clear to you. So I just wanted to go over that. The heart change there is, this guy's not, as long as you hire people you trust and who are capable of doing the job, this guy's not trying to screw me over. He's not doing this on purpose. Point. So what happened here? I can only control what I can control, and I didn't make it clear.
Yeah.
And Jocko even talks about, like, he's like, this goes all the way down. Like Bob is in charge of putting a Lego piece on another Lego piece. He's in a room with locked doors. Nobody else is in there. It's not difficult. Nobody's involved. Mm-hmm. And it's still, if Bob messes up attaching 2 Lego pieces, it is on his leadership.
Yeah.
They did not train him correctly. They did not make sure he understood the assignment. And from Bob's perspective, this is the beauty of it. Bob is thinking, this is not my leadership's fault. This is my fault. I should probably be able to figure this out. Even if they didn't train me well, I can figure, this is not so hard that I can't figure it out. And I was just telling the team, what happens across the company, if you can set this up, is a mistake happens. And instead of everyone blaming everyone else, this is not my fault. He didn't teach me. This is not my fault. He should know how to do this. It rotates it on its head. And everyone is now thinking, hey man, I probably could have made that much more clear. Or even peer to peer. And this is the beauty of it is, so the acquisition guy, say there's another acquisition guy and, you know, one of them misses an auction. His peer, not even the guy in charge of him, can be thinking, well, yeah, I mean, we're all on the same team here. Maybe I should have called you. I should have called you to make sure you were leaving in time and make sure you knew that there's traffic when you're driving down to Jefferson County at 9 a.m. And that's when it really takes off, because now you're just a team solving problems. Yeah. You're not a group of people looking to avoid blame. And that is what I just sat the team down actually the other day and showed them a short clip of the Jocko podcast. Yeah. And my head of acquisitions read the book, and he was the coolest thing probably in my entire career so far, my short career, because I had him read this book and total mindset shift and heart shift on the issue. Oh, wow. And he even told me, he's like, dude, he's like, when you used to like ask me, you know, what I thought were silly questions, I'd get mad and I thought you were questioning me. And he's like, and now I kind of realized that you were just taking ownership of what I was doing because you weren't going to blame me if something went wrong. And sitting there talking we talked for like an hour, because I was like, dude, it's like, and I'm not perfect at this, by the way. So it's like, I want, now that he knows, it's like, you can hold me accountable if I'm ever shifting blame. So that's definitely what pops into my head with culture. The only other one would be a book called The Motive. And it's like a short book by Patrick Lencioni. And if you've ever read Lencioni, he writes stories with it's like parables, kind of writes like Jesus spoke. Like it's a parable and then there's a lesson in it. Same thing. The Motive is the name of it. And the motive he's getting at is, if your motive is to make more money and move up in your career, you're not going to get very far. Or if you do, it'll all fall apart. If your motive is to make your entire team as successful as they possibly can be and to take care of your team, they're going to take care of you. So those two things kind of going together is, how would you say, like I'm putting all the marbles into those in scripture, I guess, which is both of those, in my opinion, are just books on scripture. The golden rule, humility, killing your ego. Yeah. It's like,
man, I mentioned this to Adam Dunstan, which is, works for Brody Allen Exteriors. And I think I see humility as probably one of the biggest traits in the Bible. I remember God spoke of Moses, the most humble man that had ever lived. And it says in Proverbs that it's either a proverb or a psalm, is like, what does God desire? A humble and a contrite spirit. And man, like what you were just talking about, if you can lead from a point of humility, and I really believe you and Jesse are great examples of that. I mean, I'm just watching you guys, and I believe one of the greatest ways that you can tell if a company's got a great culture is how they're their team speaks about their leaders. Like you've just have went on and on about Jesse.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the guys under you would say the same thing. And
Maybe.
I really do believe that. It goes to your humility. But I've seen other companies where they feel like they almost have to force their guys to kind of speak positive about the company, or they'll put them on a video and be like, hey, say these nice things, versus when, you know, they are genuinely talking about how much they love work and how much they love their boss and whatnot. And it's such a different, you know, culture. And I think that's the difference. If you can see true success is when you guys are freely like talking about how much they love their work and how much they love their leadership.
Yeah.
It's a good gauge.
I think you're on. And at the risk of sounding manipulative, which is funny because of what we're talking about, but Alex Hormozy, again, he calls it, what does he call it? I can't remember the name he gives it, but essentially the idea is if you pay someone, you get access to probably 20% of their effort. And then if they care about you, you get access to the other 80%.
Oh, wow.
And in my experience, I would say those numbers are dead on. Like if you're just paying someone, like they'll do it. They'll do just enough to not get fired. Mm-hmm. But if they care about you, and then the beautiful part of it is that God set it up this way, to get them to care about you, all it takes is care about them. Like it's how it's cool that's how human nature works, and our pride and stuff gets in the way. Sin nature can really kind of break it. And but
I was telling Adam this. It's like, man, a lot of times people have their end goal as like the bottom line or a number, or they want to make this amount of money or whatever, and so they're starting with the wrong mindset. And this is probably true just about of anything. I used to talk with people about this in their fitness. You know, you got to change the way you think before. But in return, the opposite of that is if you stop and really care about your people, like you're talking about, really honor God and want to be an example of that and serve other people. The byproduct is normally you get the thing that you initially wanted in the first place.
Exactly. Yep.
But you're starting from a completely different mindset or framework.
It's insane because it's all over scripture. Yeah. Like you see, if Solomon, he asked God for wisdom, and God said, because you did not ask me for riches, and because you did not ask me for success, I will give you more riches and more success than anyone's ever had. It's like, yes, if you kill that desire for the end result, funny enough, yeah, typically God will give you that end result because he, you know, in my opinion, it's because he's after your heart more than anything. So if you give him that, I think he's perfectly fine with blessing his children, so long as the blessings won't pull us away from him.
Well, I think there's a principle in there where it's not a give to get. And again, it goes back to the heart issue, like the motives of our heart. And that's why I think we always have to check our heart on a regular basis. You know, our youth pastor was just talking about this last week. In Proverbs, it says, above all else, guard your heart. And so we have to look at the motives of our heart. But like, if we're truly serving people and we truly care about them, like you said a minute ago, they're going to they're going to give more effort. Which is ultimately going to produce a better result. Like it's just is what it is, you know, like.
I definitely agree. I think part of it too, what we're talking about brings this up in my head was 3-4 years ago, something that like locked me in with Jesse as a person, like as somebody I wanted to work with, and with the company, was there's an ethical situation in the foreclosure process. And there's in the bidding, like in the purchasing of the home, what a lot of guys will do is try to kind of, and I guess I won't use names out anybody here, but what they'll try to do is pay you to leave, or try to form a little partnership before the auction starts. So we did this a couple times, and, you know, allegedly, and to Jesse's credit, and what has locked me in with the company, was we began to think about it, and we're like, okay, A, is this illegal? Highly questionable. Genuinely. It's not like it's not like clearly illegal. No one's ever been prosecuted for it. Just depending on how you look at it, we still felt a little dirty. I'm like, man, okay. Instead of just ignoring this, like, let's search our hearts here. Like, why does this feel wrong? Well, in looking into it, the bidding overage at a foreclosure sale is supposed to go back to the people who just lost their home, because it's technically the equity that they had built up in paying down their house. So while it's not directly illegal, and I would say it's for sure not. Even in looking into that more, we found out like, okay, this is for sure not illegal, because there's nothing in the law preventing businesses from forming partnerships, and then you just buy the house in that partnership. You can do it. But we just determined for ourselves, in a spirit of competition, which we're very pro-capitalism, which is all about competition, and in a spirit of the golden rule, and Jesse's a believer as well. We're like, man, what would we want somebody to do to us here if we were losing our house? We went around, and we know these other guys we compete with, and we told them all, like, look, we know we did these deals in the past, but our hearts didn't feel good about it. We're not doing these anymore. And what locked me in with Jesse is my conscience had kind of been tearing me up about it. Every time it would happen, like, man, I just don't feel great about that. I don't really know why, but I don't love it. I approached Jesse, and Jesse took me super serious and immediately began to pray and think it over. And he came back to me. He's like, Cam, he's like, you're right. Like, I don't love it either. And we stopped doing it. Wow. And, and we've lost money because of that decision. We've lost out on opportunities. But to tie it back to what we're talking about, when I realized Jesse is going to make ethical decisions, and he's going to support me in my ethical decisions, and because we're believers, like in the face of God and in light of his judgment and his love, again, I was like, all right, I'm locked in with this guy.
That's incredible,
because
you're a lifer now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, no matter what happens, whether it's with Simpli Homes or anything else, I always know I can work with Jesse, because when rubber met the road, he made an ethical decision with me. And especially because it was just a blurry one. We never would have, there was no law against it.
Yeah.
We didn't have to stop doing it.
Not only that, is he displayed humility again with you. Like, because he's like taking your advice or what matters to you, and he's humbling himself. Because, a lot of business owners would be like, I'm the bee's knees. You don't like tell me what to do.
Seriously, you're not kidding. I was scared to go to him.
Yeah,
that's kind of why it happened 2 or 3 times, maybe even more. It was a few years ago now, but I had felt it multiple times, like the little bit of like, not like keeping me up at night, but just I don't know.
Just nervous.
And so when I thought about it, I was like, do I really want to go to my boss and say this? And Jesse was extremely humble about it. And I guess for, I don't know who's going to watch this, but to be completely fair, if anybody's out there making those deals, again, nothing illegal about them. Very, very bored. It's a fringe issue when it comes to ethics. For us, we made a decision. I don't cast any judgment on anyone who does something different, but just for me, it was, hey, Jess, I don't feel comfortable about this. And exactly, he was very humble about it. Didn't, you're just a worker. Why don't you stop thinking so much? Like, he could have easily said that to me.
Exactly.
And that's not what he did. And I don't even think he knows, but that, like I said, that locked it in of like, all right, I want to partner with this guy on anything I could ever partner with this guy on. And I think that trickles down into the company of like, look, we're not just out here for gross profit. If we were, we wouldn't have made at this point a handful of decisions. Cause that kind of led into a lot of discussions with Jesse and I, which is now our ultimate goal is to get much more into the pre-foreclosure market and actually try to help people not get foreclosed on, which we have found is tremendously more difficult because the people getting foreclosed on are getting foreclosed on for a reason. And it's typically, sometimes it's divorce and they just want to screw each other. But in the other instances, it's typically something mentally, like they're kind of not with it. Because again, the foreclosure process, you get months and months of mail, and no banks want to foreclose. Yeah. So if you kind of get there, something's going on. But it's cool because, again, the way God has kind of set things up, you can be blessed for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
How we've gotten so far in progress for there, we haven't bought any pre-foreclosures yet, but on occupied properties, we used to just not really go up to them because we're like, okay, it's occupied, we don't want to bother them. We'd purchase it and then go through the exact step-for-step legal process. You send them a notice, send them another notice, you go to court, and then a sheriff shows up and kicks them out of their house. And we were like, that's what the law has set up. We're just going to do what the law says. Well, now, because we're like, all right, let's actually care about these people. Like, what would we want somebody to do to us? I have got to give major props to our acquisition team. They speak to every occupant, befriend almost every occupant. And become good friends with them. And we've gotten to the point now where this is not a new concept. It's called cash for keys. We've gotten to the point now where we can give them typically their first and last month's rent to get to a new place,
man.
And we'll send a moving truck and a bunch of guys to help them get their stuff and take it to their new place.
That's so cool.
Which in terms of sleeping at night is a lot better than showing up with the sheriff and like literally just booting them out. You don't get any of your stuff. You don't have a place to live. Wow. Again, totally legal. That's actually what the law prescribes, but my acquisition team really took a hold of that, and they're just through empathetic communication, like, hey, I know you're going through a tough spot. But let's not make it worse. Yeah. Like, please work with us. We can get you some money and we can help you move instead of you just being on your own. So that's the ethical journey that I've been on with Simpli Homes. And I just tying it back to culture. I think it did for me. It really sealed in, okay, we're not just a money hungry, no ethics, don't care about people company. Like, we even care about the people in the homes that we're purchasing, like from our employees to those people. We just care about people here.
Dude, that's so awesome, man. I feel like it's such a good place to wrap up. I feel like we could talk for hours.
I could, sorry.
No, I would love to be able to have you and hopefully Jesse back on. And I really think you guys should start your own podcast, because I think you guys could both offer so much valuable information to the world. But it's a great place to you brought it full circle back to just loved hearing your story, loved hearing all about Simpli Homes. Is there a way for people to reach out to you guys or get information as far as, I don't even know if that's something that you want to provide for, if it could help your business out or whatever?
Yeah. So kind of in line with what we're talking about, for a long time, we just bought foreclosures and didn't have anything, but we do have a website now. It's just www.simplihomes, spelled with an I. It's on my hat. Simplihomes.com. And then, the way you could help us out or help us help somebody else out would be this new initiative we're trying to do, which is if you know anybody who might get foreclosed on, or anybody who's struggling with their bills, reach out. We genuinely, this is something I go over with the guys all the time. We will not just try to buy the house. That is actually not our first offer. We will go through with them, can you get a personal loan to catch up? Is there anything you can do to save your house? Well, we have 7 options. And this is all from Pace Morby as well. He's a great guy. It's where we learned it from. But that would be the request, I guess, is if you know anybody going through a hard time, reach out. Maybe we can help them out. Maybe we can't, but we'll do our best.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it, man. Hopefully we'll have these guys back on to do a lot more podcasts, be able to, give some great information to you guys. If you guys all like these podcasts, if you like the information, feel free to like, subscribe, share. We would be very appreciative of that. Hit that, smash that like button, whatever, punch it, whatever you want to do. But God bless you guys. Have a great day. Peace. That was awesome, bro.
Very cool.
Dude, that was so good. I feel like we could talk for hours.